first thing is first. If you haven't yet, here is the bit.ly to join the slides. This is recorded, so we are going to go over a lot of resources. So if you are like, what was that? Don't worry, this is recorded. You can also email me and reach out, and I'm happy to answer questions or send you a link or whatever that way as well. So first off, welcome to Amped Up Your Teaching. We're going to be talking about 20 different ways that you can make your learning in your classroom more dynamic. And I am so sad to not be there in person. I was really hoping to, but I am doing summer school. And so with summer school, I work the mornings, and I've been able to use these strategies in that classroom. And a lot of students in my summer school class hate school. And so if these students really like them, I feel like almost any student will really like it as well. So I'm excited to share some of these different strategies that I use almost all the time. So about me, I'm Stephanie Howe. I am a podcaster, YouTuber. I'm an author. I wrote a book on executive functioning skills. I am an oversharer. So again, this is recorded. If you need something, you can go back through the recording. And your goal for today is just to walk away with one new idea. If there's just too much or too much kind of going on, again, one idea is your goal. And then you can come back to the slides or come back to the video, and you're able to rewatch and come up with another idea. So we are going to go over a lot of different things. If you want to follow me on Twitter, there's my Twitter, or if you have questions, feel free to reach out there. And then my why is I was a struggling student that in classrooms, it was a lot of direct instruction and not a lot of fun. And so my goal is kind of to make learning fun and engaging for students. And then my life-changing moment was when I went to Sydney, Australia for the Google Innovator Academy. And I really learned how to build a network with people and how to create a psychological safe environment. And so that was just completely life-changing for me. It's when I kind of started to get over imposter syndrome. I'm never really over it, but I started to learn what it was and how to kind of catch it. Some of the resources will ask you to request access. Right here is a bit.ly. So it's bit.ly/goldhello. And what will happen is some of the resources are going to say you don't have access to this. So when you go here, you're going to be able to join the group. Once you join, you'll have access to everything. And then you also have a resource of a PLN. Like today, they were asking about financial literacy and summer resources for parents. And so this community is a really amazing group of educators. So again, some of the resources, if it asks you to request access, you just need to join the group, which is on slide number 3 of the slides. And then if you are getting too many emails, you can come in here and you can manage your settings, and you can change it to where you get no emails, or you can do it so you get like 1 email a day. So go in if that's kind of overwhelming you as well. But this is a great way. If you have questions, use the group as well. So the research, why should we make our classroom more engaging for our students? And the first thing is active learning. We want our students, research has shown when our students are maybe using hands-on activities, or they're up and moving, or they're problem solving, this is going to promote engagement within them and allow students to take that active learning role in their own learning. Personalization. So when students might be lacking some knowledge, we're able to bridge that gap. Or if students might be mastered it, we're able to kind of dive deeper with those students and provide them some extensions. And so again, knowing where the students are, we're going to talk about some personalization when it comes to engagement as well. Collaboration, getting students to work together in groups, whether that's with peers or if they're with like 3 to 4 different students. We're going to talk about how they collaborate, because I don't know about you, but there was some times when it came to collaboration and my students were talking anything other but that project. And so how do we create these protocols to really help them collaborate and focus in on the activity? Feedback is another one. Giving those students regularly, but also timely feedback is really important to really track their learning and to make sure that they have that sense of accomplishment, and it gives them that ownership as well. And then support. So when we support our students, they are going to be engaged as well. So we're going to walk through some just different ways that we make our students feel valued and respected in the classroom. So the first idea is Sesame Street quiz. And what happens is you have a wheel. And on the wheel, students will have different content that you are currently teaching. So maybe it's characters out of a book, problems, solutions, anything that you're kind of teaching, facts from history, people, important people. And then what students do is they have to make connections. How is this connected to whatever they spun? And then they share and they justify. So if you click on the images, it's going to take you to the resource. I've tried to include videos. So if you're like, I just want that one strategy, there should be a video to support you as well. So right here, again, you spin a wheel. I like to use Flippity or the Wheel of Names. And what you do is, this is from Typing Spirit Bear, is the students will spin the wheel. And once they spin the wheel, they need to make those connections. So Peter's mom, isolation, Minnesota or Minneapolis. And what students will do is then they make those connections on how these are connected. You could also do which one doesn't belong. And where you can add that extension is when the students have to justify how they belong or which one does not belong. So great activity for students to do, maybe the last 5 minutes of class. Again, you can just spin it. They can work with different groups, and then they make those connections with the words that were spent, and the students can then, again, go on. And what's nice about Flippity is if you don't like one of them, you can just spin that part of the wheel. So that is the Sesame Street quiz. The next one is Tabletop Twitter. So when it comes to Tabletop Twitter, I like to use this as an entrance ticket or an exit ticket. And students will write down what they just learned. So 140 characters is typically what I have my middle school students use. Maybe if you work with kindergarten or first grade, you might change 140 to something else. But then the students just write a quick summary about what they just learned. Once they do that, they sketch it. So then they draw an image that goes along with what they just learned, and they come up with a hashtag. So for example, this one might be main idea. And once they add their hashtag, they then will trade it with a partner. So after they have each of these 3 boxes complete, students will retweet it and there find a friend that is going to add on one more idea. So the friend will add on whatever they want to about what that student took away. And then they come back and they can read what their friend said. The other student would go with that friend, and it's kind of like a trade where they just trade papers, and then they would just share and retweet. So it could be a great way for students to just summarize their learning. Again, I like to use this more as an exit ticket or when the students come in the next day. And I just say, okay, write a quick summary of what we learned, sketch it, hashtag it, and then we do a share out. And I usually set a timer here because I am the worst at wait time. And so for me, I need that timer. And I'll set like a 2-minute timer for them to share and retweet that hashtag. So again, this probably takes about 7 minutes for me to get going. The first time I do it, I walk through an example with my students. So we will create the Twitter posts together. And then after they get used to it, they're on their own and they're ready to go. Number 3 is the waiting room. So a lot of times at the BMV, I have had to go and you pull a number and then you wait for your number to be called. So it works very similar to that, where students will grab a number. So I have these little honeycombs here and I just cut them out. And then usually I just add a magnet on the back of them and I put them up in the classroom. And then students are able to grab one of these honeycombs. Once they grab these honeycombs, I then will change these numbers. So I'm ready for student 1, student 2, number 3, 4, 5, and so on. What the students are doing, because I'm conferencing with students, is they're working on their must-do list. So typically the must-do list is pretty independent work. It might be they watch a video, they might complete some practice. I might even add in here, once you're done with that practice, grab a number because you need to check in with me. And what this kind of does is it allows self-pacing in my classroom to help students kind of go wherever they're at. And once they check in with me, I can review that practice or independent activity that the students were working on. I can quickly maybe have that Edpuzzle up and checking their progress. And then if they finish the list, I always have some type of can-do activity for them to do that is kind of an extension. So usually it's project-based where my students can begin to maybe do a project or problem-based instruction that they're kind of working through. Sometimes I will do this slide. I like this slide to change the number because then they can see the must-dos and can-dos. Sometimes if they're just working on like catch-up work, I might just pull up this slide and go down the different numbers as well. So then I might say, okay, I'm on 1, now I'm on student 2. That student comes up, I conference with them. This also works really well for writing conferences when I'm working with students because then I'm able to give them that individualized feedback as well. So I just kind of, again, I set this up and I just kind of go through the numbers and I can just yell out 1, 2, 3, and then the students just come up and they give feedback on what they need. And then roll it. This again can be adapted for any subject. This is an ELA example. And what happens is students are going to read a passage. They could watch it where they're watching a video. Students could be maybe like looking over an example. There's multiple different things that students could do. Maybe they're completing a lab, so they're conducting it. And what happens is students will roll a dice. And once they roll that dice, whatever number it lands on is the question that they have to answer. So for example, number 2, they would have to explain the relationship between the 2 main characters in the story. And then they respond to it over in this box. Sometimes they respond to it by drawing. Sometimes they respond to it by writing. Sometimes I give them a choice. Sometimes I tell them, you're writing today, or I want to see a sketch today. So it just kind of depends on the day and what kind of we're covering as well. So if I was doing this with science, I could do like reflection questions about a lab. If I was doing this with math, maybe they're looking over an example on how to solve it. And then I have 6 different math problems that the students might have to solve. But they usually work in partners. The student will have a partner and they roll it together. One student will do one number and then the other student rolls and they might do another, and then they can check each other's work. So that's a really fun activity for the students. And again, you can just change the questions. I also like this for ELA because I can use these questions with almost any book that I am teaching. And the students just have this right there available for them. I don't typically have to change it. So I do like just having some of these questions be the same because then again, it doesn't matter what book they're reading, they're able to answer these questions. And then number 5 is mystery predictions. So when it comes to mystery predictions, students are in a group. So typically their group is about 4 to 5 students. And what they do is they read quotes. So as the teacher, when I'm getting this ready, I usually go over to ChatGPT or Bard, and I use the AI. And I will just say, give me 10 quotes from, let's do the Touching Spirit Bear. And what Bard is doing is it's going to grab me 10 quotes from Touching Spirit Bear. I could also do this in ChatGPT, and I could also Google it. So, or you could pull out the book and pull them out, but I find this to be really fast. So right here, I see all of these quotes popping up from ChatGPT and Bard, and then I can pick the ones that I want to use. So right here, I might pick this one. I copy and paste it over to the template. I put who said it, and I can even ask them to include the character that said that. And I like to put the character's role. Then I do the next one, the 3rd one, the 4th one, 5th one, and 6th one. So I need 6 total quotes from ChatGPT or Bard. And once I have those, then we're ready for the students to read the quotes in order. So students will read quote number 1. So for an example, if quote number 1 is anger is like a thorn in the heart, students then make a prediction. So students in this box will write down a prediction based on what they just read from that one textual evidence. So students might think that there might be some type of conflict where the character is really angry. So that's their prediction. Then they get another quote. So then they get quote number 2. The students read it. So maybe it says the world is full of broken people. Students take quote 1 and quote 2. So now they have 2 pieces of textual evidence, and now they're going to make their second prediction. Their second prediction should be a lot stronger because, again, they have 2 pieces of textual evidence. Then they do clue 3. They have another piece of textual evidence. Then clue 4, clue 5, and then they make their final prediction. And I typically give some type of reward for the student that had the closest. If I was doing this with math, I might put different math problems up here or different word problems, and the students might have to try to figure out what they are about to learn. I might do this for science where I do different facts or different science experiments or something, and I kind of explain different case studies or parts of the thing that they're trying to figure out, or history, different facts or different battles that took place. Or I could even use quotes from people that happened in history. This is a great hook activity that gets the students engaged in about what they're about to learn. And then again, they're making that final prediction of what the story or what the activity or what the unit is about to be about. The unfair game, we just played this one yesterday. What happens is students answer questions. So I will have multiple different questions up for the students to answer. They pick a number, and then they decide if they're going to keep it or give it away before seeing the amount behind the number. The team with the most points is our winner. So for this example, all of these numbers, students might pick number 24. So I'm going to say, do you want to keep it or give it away? They might say keep it. They click the number. They have 100 points. So team 100 points. I cross off 24 on the board. And then I have team 2. They answer a question. They got it right. Team 2, do you want to pick a number? And they pick 28. Do you want to keep it or give it away? They want to give it away. And so they just gave -30 to another team. And so the way that you can kind of set this up is that students are able to come in and they get to decide if they want to keep it or give it away. You're having them answer questions. And then behind the scenes here, all of these are linked slides. And then you can just choose the amount. So if I want to play again, rather than 10 points, this one is now worth 100. Or maybe I could do a -10 or whatever you want to do to kind of switch it up. I've even done like physical challenges so they don't win points. They actually have to do like push-ups or jumping jacks or something like that. But I just come in here and then I can change whatever. I also like to do swap points because then it adds some fun to the game as well. Trackers. I love to use trackers. This is, again, more for me to know where students are at. It can also motivate students if they have a self-pacing tracker. So I will write all of my students' names over here at the beginning of the year. If I have multiple classes, I'll just duplicate this and create a class 2, class 3, class 4, and so on. I like to use SMART goals as well. So up here is a goal, and my students will create a SMART goal every single quarter. So they will create each part separately of the SMART acronym, and then they come up and they put their goal up here. Then we conference and I come up and they come up to me and we talk about an action item when we think we'll complete it. And then we talk about any obstacles and maybe solutions that we could use to overcome those obstacles. And so then my students, as I'm checking in with them, I'm able to link their goals right here. I can either copy and paste the goal, or I just link this document as I'm meeting with them. And that lets me know who I still need to meet with. So whoever doesn't have a link or text in this box lets me know I need to meet with student number 18. And then over here, I'm able to quickly do some conferencing with my students and say, okay, you have not started yet. And I can have them talk to me about what their next steps are. And so then when I meet with them next, I can kind of track their progress to see where they're at. I also use this with assignments as well. So I can say like task 1, task 2, and I can see where students are in the process of where that task is. And then I can check in on students. Okay, all of these kids that have not done task 1, you need to come up to my table so we can chat, get a mini lesson, answer any questions that you might have about that assignment. So this is a great way to just kind of make sure every student is on task. And sometimes I let the students change it so everybody has access, and then they would come in and change their one area. Crazy eights. So this is a great way to get students to brainstorm. Students have 30 seconds per box. Then they get a 10-second break, 30 seconds per this box, break, 30 seconds per this box, break, and then 30 seconds. A lot of companies use this to brainstorm product ideas and solutions. And so students are maybe writing or about to do some type of maybe genius hour or project based learning or problem-based learning, they'll come in here and they'll write out all of their ideas. So students will kind of do a brain dump. They can sketch, they can draw. I print this out. I've also done this in Pear Deck. And students will write out what their first idea is. Then a 10-second break, next box. 10-second break, next box. Usually by this box, students get very kind of worn down and out of ideas. And so we have to keep pushing them. So I just say, okay, come up with your worst idea, another bad idea, another bad idea. And then they meet with a partner after these 8 boxes and they just kind of share. And sometimes the worst ideas aren't that bad. And that's the direction they go because they talk with their partner and their partner's like, that's a really good idea. And this is what you could do, or they +1 it or add an idea to it. So Crazy Eights is a great way for students to just brainstorm. It also is a great way to get students to feel safe in your classroom. I'll use this to kind of help with behavior issues. If I'm seeing something in the classroom of maybe a student at recess is doing something that they shouldn't be, well, what are some solutions that we could do? And the student will come up with 8 different solutions and we'll kind of problem solve together. So just a great way to get students to think out of the box in an organized way. And then capture the flag. This was another one I did this past week. What happens is students will answer questions again. You can play in a group or individually. Students will then, after they answer the questions, check their answer with the teacher. So this works great if you have task cards or maybe you just have questions on a worksheet. I love to use this game, especially for math, because it's just nice for students to practice a ton of questions and equations, and then I can quickly check them. What they do is they each have so many flags at their desk. They don't know what the colors mean until the end of the game. So every single group or every single student has maybe 4, 6 flags per group or per table. And then what happens is if they get the answer correct, I usually give them a star on their paper. They get to steal a flag from another team. So if they get it right, they get up, they move, they grab a flag, they come back to their seat, they work on their next problem. Then another student, they check it with me, I star it, they get up, they grab a flag, they go back to their seat. And then I usually set a timer. My students could play seriously probably all day with this game, but I usually set like a timer for 15 to 20 minutes. And then at the end of the game, they figure out how much these flags are worth. And then the group with the most points at the end wins the game. And so for this example, it was green was 5, pink was 3, orange was 6 points, and yellow was 10. So then they count them all up. And again, we have a winner. And I give some type of reward for those students. But they love it. Again, they're working as a group. Sometimes I'll do whiteboards and I will just be walking around, checking in with students and giving them feedback while they're kind of working too. If they finish early and they're waiting for me, I just tell them do 2, and then they can steal 2 flags at that time. Glow and Grow is another great activity for peer feedback. So I cut these out, and every student has like one of these. It's kind of like a Post-it note size. And what they do is they give feedback. So they use a glow, which is something good, and a grow, something that that student can improve on. And what happens is they will kind of use these sentence stems to help them give feedback, because feedback is not natural for students. And I've heard them say it's not natural for adults either. And I've heard students say some negative things when giving feedback. So we learn how do you word giving feedback, because that's a life skill. So I might say if it's a glow, I really like how you added blank. Or if it's a grow, I wasn't sure about blank. And then what I love to do, this was a video thing that we did with this activity. I love students to add timestamps. So I really like how you added the font at 3.6 seconds. It just kind of helps make that feedback more detailed and easy for the student to improve on if they did something. So for example, what was your intent when the font came up really quickly and then left? It was really hard to read, and that happened at this amount of time. They're also going back and they're citing their resources. So we're working on that textual evidence as well when we're giving feedback. So I just kind of model for them. I walk through how to give feedback. I love using those timestamps. If it's a written piece, I will have them pull it out from the actual paper. If it's a podcast, we use the timestamps as well. But it gives students a chance to kind of look at other students in their class's work, and then they just leave them that glow and that grow of where they want them to improve. Grade checks. So the best time to do a grade check is at weeks 3, 5, and 7. And so when students are in a 9 weeks, we often wait, or I often waited until week 7 to really get them caught up. And it was overwhelming for me. It was overwhelming for the students. And so what I've realized is adding a week 3 and 5 in the mix is really helpful. So what my students do is on this Google form, it has some formulas calculating. So you'll just go up to tools and then manage form, and you are able to go to your form. So once you make a copy of this, you'll go to manage form up here, and then you can edit your own form that will also duplicate the copy. So you want to make a copy of the spreadsheet because of, again, some of the formulas that are calculating. And then you can come in and make changes on this Google form. And then when I send this to students, it's going to ask them about their different grades, what quarter it is it week 3, 5, or 7? And what students will do is they will complete this Google form at the end of week 3, 5, and 7. And then I will meet with my other teachers on my team that also see these same students. And we look at the missing assignments that the student has. We look at the grades that the student has. And we don't even talk. We just do a thumbs up, they're good. Thumbs to the side, they're okay. Or thumbs down, they're not okay. And so we just quickly do those hand signals. We try not to talk because typically we have anywhere from 70 to 130 kids on a team. And so again, it's just a quick little finger. And then if they are a red or their thumbs down, who is going to advocate for that child? What teacher is going to make sure that this student knows that they have 7 missing assignments and that's not acceptable? Which teacher is going to email home? Which teacher is going to work with that child? Maybe during like a class reward where the other students get to do something, that teacher is going to be able to work with that student to help them get caught up. But then it's also eye-opening because I can see as a teacher, okay, if this student has this many in this class and with me they have this many, how can I also support that child as well? And so we can work on those executive functioning skills such as time management to really help this student be more successful. But again, it's just a quick thumbs up, thumbs to the side, or thumbs down. And then I just mark it here, and then I put who's going to work with that child to get them caught up by the 9 weeks. So again, if we can catch it by week 3, and there's less assignments, that child and myself is going to be a lot less overwhelmed before that end of that quarter. And then feedback. So another strategy you can use to give feedback is tag feedback. So this activity, what we did is students reviewed how to give good feedback. So I walked through here's a rubric I have. We're looking at the title and author. This was a video project. And so if I wanted to tell something that I really liked, this is how I do it. I would say, I really like how you use the title in the book in your video. If I had a question about it, this is how I would ask the question. Why did you pick that font for the title and author of your book? And then if I wanted to give a suggestion, this is an example of how I would do it. I would capitalize Ben Michelson's first and last initial at the 37-second time. So again, I walk through with students how to give feedback. I provide them sentence structures. So that way in September, they understand how and the expectation. And so by the time that the students by like December, they are ready to give feedback without all of these protocols because it's just natural for them. And so again, they watch the video for a minute. I love timers, so I'll set that timer. They give feedback then for 2 minutes on this piece of paper. So we had the videos up as a gallery walk. This paper was printed out and we wrote down, they rated it, they told something that they liked, they asked a question, they gave a suggestion, and then they gave their initial. And so then they switched at the 30-second mark and they repeated that process. And then the last 5 minutes, we just kind of talked about looking over that feedback. How could you improve next time? What things did you like from the videos that you watched? And we just have like a quick discussion about those activities. But again, timers and then having that protocol in place make it really, really easy to implement with my students. And then chance. So this has 100 little squares on this board. And as students are answering questions correctly or behavior, this is a great one. So as I catch students being good or they got a question right, they go up to the board, they put their name in one of these boxes. I have teachers that will print this out poster size to use. I also have other teachers that will just have it digitally where the students might go up to the whiteboard and they'll project it. So as students answer correctly, their name goes in a box. At the end of the timer or the end of all the boxes being filled, I will either call a number, roll a spinner, or do some type of activity, maybe ask Google for a number between 1 and 100, or I might call the teacher down the hall and ask her for a number between 1 and 100. And what happens is that student wins that prize that is in that box. So if it's 47, whoever was in that box is the winner. Another way that I like to use this activity is I like to put stars. So if I catch the whole class being good or the whole class is answering questions, I'll have one student go up and put a star in a box. If the star gets chosen, so for example, if the star was in 25 and it got chosen, everybody in the class gets like a Jolly Rancher or extra recess or something. And the kids love it when the star wins because, again, everybody in the class wins. So that's just sometimes a fun activity as well to add that star in, or you can keep it for individual rewards as you catch students being good or answering questions correctly. And then the bus. So we were having a lot of issues with the bus and not knowing that their bus was here because the students weren't listening on the loudspeaker. So there's two different versions. This one is the Google Slide version. And once the bus is here, the secretary will move the bus over. So bus 18's here. They announce it so students can hear it, but now they can also see it. And so then they might say, okay, bus 13 is here, bus 14, 65. And then the students can see the buses that are here. We also kind of use it in the classroom as these students should be in your class from breakfast because their bus has just arrived. So it's just a nice way for teachers to know which students are present or which students can leave their classroom to get on the bus. Similar process, only it's in a Google Sheet. This school, they just add the time that the bus arrived, and then it just turned red. So here it's like 3:41. Again, they call it on the loudspeaker, but then the students can also see it. And it's just been really helpful for our whole building to have this. We can put when buses change numbers, so then they know, okay, 67 is 47, because that always led to students missing their bus. And then we can say, okay, this bus has been here at this time, and then the students can see that. Vocabulary sketches. This idea is based on kind of Edu Protocols, Sketch and Tell. What you will do is you will add a word right in this box. So all of the vocabulary words can go in this box. Students will write their own definition and then they can sketch it. So they will draw an example of that word in this box. Typically, I do this on paper. However, you could have them do it digitally where they add an image from the web. But that is kind of up to you. But I just love this template because, again, the word is here, the definition, they have their sketch. And they can kind of see all of the different words that they're using for vocabulary. Reflections. So reflections are a great way to kind of focus in on how students are doing. So when students walk in, they will complete this top row of activities. So how are you feeling today? Students pick a quick smiley face on how they're doing. Do they need a personal check-in with me? Yes or no? And they answer that question. And then based on where they are starting their work today, are they on pace, behind pace, or ahead of pace? So students will answer where they're at, and we'll kind of talk about what this means in a little bit. But students have like a self-paced roadmap, and they're able to tell me where they're at on that roadmap. What is their goal for class today? They're going to come up with some type of goal that they want to accomplish during that class period. And then at the end of class, we do this quick reflection where they can then tell me what is up to date, make sure that their checklist is up to date, that tracker. And then if they need another personal check-in with me, yes or no. And then I usually call students up that next day to conference with them based on this question. And then I ask them, did they meet their goal? Did they not meet their goal? Did they exceed their goal? So they went over and above. And then their plan for the next class period. So I just love using this to quickly focus students on their goal for the day, what they've accomplished, and what next steps need to be done in order for that student or those students to be really successful. And then again, I use these so I know, okay, who do I need to pull for a small group tomorrow? Who do I need to pull real quick while the other students are starting off with a video or some type of other activity? Or after they have done that mini lesson, I can then pull the students that need a check-in with me. So it's just a great way to kind of check in on students and keep them accountable with goal setting real quick at the beginning of class. And again, the first time does take a little bit longer, but then the students get quicker and quicker at it as we get going. And timers, again, are my best friend. I usually set like a quick timer. They circle, they highlight, whatever. Sometimes I'll put this on Pear Deck and the students will just come in and they'll do that first part and they'll just circle real quickly. You could also do this on a Google form. So you could have these kind of be separate questions and the students just come in. And then you could track their progress over time to see, okay, this kid is really angry the past 5 days. What is going on? Or this student has been behind pace the last 4 weeks. I need to really support this student, and what are some things that I can put in place to support them? 17, which one doesn't belong? So with this activity, there are 4 different images, and you can kind of see here that there's basketball, brownie, cookie, and there's a cake. And then they all could belong, but students have to use their reasoning and justification to really explain which one does not belong. So they could say the basketball because it's not something you would eat. They could say this cookie because it's pink and everything else is brown. And students, again, they kind of justify out to the side why each of these could not belong. And then what we do is we kind of look over and they can decide based on their reasoning which one is the strongest argument that they can use to justify which one does not belong and why. So you can put math here, you can put different vocabulary words, you could put facts in history or battles, you could put different characters in a book. And then students, again, they have to argue which one doesn't belong. I like to use this activity in August with something similar as slide 2. Because it allows students to develop the skills at a low cognitive area where they're familiar with basketball, they're familiar with brownies and cookies and cake. And so they're learning how to organize the information in an easier way before the content gets added into it. So they're learning the procedure, they're learning the task right up front. And then after students kind of get the hang of it, then I'm able to add in that content where it could be vocabulary words and they have to explain which one doesn't belong. Or it could be math problems and they have to explain which one doesn't belong and why. So adding that why and that justification is how you up that DOK level, that depth of knowledge level. This one is a quick way to engage your students at the beginning of a story or science experiment or science unit or history, something that's going on. You can play a sound clip. So this clip is like the wind blowing. And then what can happen is that students would then prediction. based on that noise that you just heard, what do you think we're going to learn today? Or what do you think we're going to learn in this unit? And it just kind of, again, grabs their attention because it's quick, it's easy. They're listening to that sound effect, and then they get to add in their prediction of what they think is about to happen based on that sound of the wind. And then Instagram. So right here is an Instagram. I like to use this with different content, characters, vocab, anything that the students are learning, even people in history. Maybe it's an invention as well. And students will add this person or this thing as the profile image. You can do this again digitally or on paper. And if students are doing this on paper, they'll just draw their person. If they're doing it digitally, they'll find something from the web to kind of add. So then they can search the web, they can search whatever character they want to use in the web. They're able to write how many posts this person posts based on all of that information, their followers, who they're following, and then they write their bio, and then 3 images that that person just posted, and then they can put who liked it and then what they said in a hashtag. So this is a great way to get students to kind of think and make connections with different characters from a book, people in history, or things in science. And what students will then do is they will go in and complete this activity. What I love most is once the students are done with this activity is our classroom discussion. So I will set a classroom discussion where I will ask students to share. Why did this person follow? Or why does this person only have 5 followers where this person has 20 million followers or whatever? And they can kind of use that to really explain the influence that this person had in history or the influence that this person has in the book. They can also do those character-to-character connections of why this person liked that post and why this person liked that post. It's just a fun way to get students to think, but I just love the conversations that come out of this when we do finish this activity and they start to speak up about this activity, because they're able to justify, again, all of the different reasons they did some of these activities. And then the 5 E's. So the 5 E's is a great model. This is an example of the Westing Games. So going back real quick to our reflection. So when I talked about being on pace, behind pace, and ahead of pace, I love to use these roadmaps where students are completing different activities to really help guide their instruction. And so with these different pieces, I might say, for example, that box number 3 is on pace. So because my students know that box 3 is on pace, on that other piece, that reflection, they can then let me know, oh, I'm behind pace because I'm only at box number 2. Or I'm ahead of pace because I'm at box 5. And so because we start to self-pace and kind of organize our lessons that way, they start to be able to time manage as well. So right here is the engagement activity. And so the 5 E's, if you're not familiar with it, is a design that helps you engage your students and allow them kind of a way to organize your instruction. So when it comes to engagement, this is very similar to mystery predictions. It's called popcorn predictions. And again, I just grab quotes from a book, and then students will read these quotes. Rather than in a group, they do a think, pair, share. So students will partner up, and they read their quote to another partner. They both make a prediction on their piece of paper. Then they find another partner, they pop around the room. And with the next partner, they then will read their next quote. So now they have, again, 2 pieces of textual evidence, and then they write it in the next box. They pop around the room again for a 3rd piece of evidence, and then they write their 3rd piece of evidence, or their 3rd prediction right here, and so on. So very, very similar to mystery predictions. The biggest difference is it's not a group. It's just with partners, and they pop around the room. Again, I set timers. I usually do minutes, so 30 seconds each for the partners to share their quote, and then the other person shares, and then they talk and they write down their prediction. And then very similar, that final prediction, whoever's the closest will get some type of reward at the end of that unit or the end of that activity. But it's just a great way to quickly engage students in what they're about to learn. Then explore is the next part of the 5Es model. So right here, students will complete a gallery walk, and this is for the Westing Games. And so with the Westing Games, there are so many characters in the story that it often gets really confusing for the students. You could also do this with vocabulary words for an upcoming unit, or key like details that they need to know. And then I put these little descriptions next to each of the different people. And then students will use that vocabulary sketch and tell, and they will put the characters that they want to pick. So they only have to pick 6 characters. And then they write about that character and they sketch it. So very similar to that other activity, but they're sketching their characters and they're writing down key details about those characters. And then after the students complete that gallery walk, then they will watch the videos. And I just record myself reading, I pause and I annotate what I'm kind of saying out loud with the students. There's a part in the Westing Games where the smoke comes on at the Westing house, and I kind of talk about that and I bring it up because I use WeVideo to edit the videos, and then students can actually see that smoke appearing. And so as I'm reading these different books to them, then they're able to see as well some of these visuals come to life through that WeVideo editing. And as I'm reading, one of the strategies I love to do is real talk discussion. And I heard this on the Code of Pedagogy podcast. And what happens is that students have Post-it notes. And on their Post-it notes, as they're reading or as they're listening along, they're going to write down questions that pop up, quotes that pop up, observations, connections, style, vocabulary. And you could change this to fit your subject with these different categories. And they will write down those different ideas on their Post-it notes. Some of the stems will help students think of different questions. How, what if, why? Maybe there's a quote in the story. Observations such as like, did you notice when this happened? It was interesting that, or this stuck out because, or I wondered if. There's also the vocabulary. Why do you think the author chose this word? Maybe the style. Why did the author do this certain type of sentence structure, the symbolism, the connections? X reminds me of blank. So students are writing down all of their different ideas on these Post-it notes. Then what happens, because of my goal, they had to be by box 3 by the end of class, because at the end of class, we're coming back together whole group. So whole group, the last 15 minutes, we're doing that real talk discussion. So again, students need to be done with that box because at the end of that class, we're doing that discussion. What students do with their Post-it notes is they put them in different categories, either by the sequence of the story or by the different category that is kind of taking place. So they put all the questions together, or they put all of the quotes together, observations. I usually leave that up to the students. Then they pick 4 questions from each student to just kind of place out there. And then they start their discussion and they will ask each other the questions that they have, and then they will answer. They use their books for textual evidence to provide reasoning between why they think the author chose that vocabulary word or why that question appeared. And there are some really great discussions that took place. And I also have this resource available for students where it talks about how to agree, disagree, and kind of exploring other possibilities. So using different sentence themes to really help those students engage in their learning as well. And then after that, there's a choice board. So students can do one of these activities, or sometimes I do a must do, can do, and aspire to do activity. One-pagers are great for any topic. Students can add quotes, they can add facts, they can add vocabulary words, they can add drawings, and then they just pick out the template that they really like, and they're able to explain their learning on these pieces of paper. I typically print these out and have the colored pencils or the markers out for students to add some color to them and really start to explain their thinking out loud. And then the Instagram we talked about. So for this one, they picked a character from the Westing Games and they had to explain them. And it was just really interesting on how the students decided who to pick and why. And some of the pictures that they chose were really interesting in that explanation of why they picked them again was really great that they were able to provide. And then the mastery check. So I like to provide some formative and summative data in my lessons to know where my students are at. And so this is a response to literature. And what students will do is they pick one of these questions, and typically I make them highlight it. And then what they do is throughout the chapters, they can't pick that question again. So then they have to pick a different question the next couple chapters, and then they have to pick another box. And so by the end of the book, or after the end of so many chapters, they will have different boxes colored in. And then I have this rubric right here, so I know where my students are at, and I'm able to provide them that feedback. And then if they've mastered it, they can keep going. If they haven't mastered it yet, they might pick a new box after they kind of receive some conversations with me, or if I've learned that they haven't even read it yet, they'll go back and rewatch the videos or redo some of the activities. But this has been really helpful just to kind of have them quickly decide what they want to do. It provides that choice and voice, but then also they can't redo one of these questions when they are working on this. So they have to pick a new one for the next mastery check. And this model is based on Modern Classrooms, and I just love their model, and I love kind of using that in my classroom because it allows that self-pacing. I'm able to conference with students and meet them exactly where they're at. And then I like to provide reminders up here. So like with the gallery walk, remember to turn that into the red bin. These are the kids I'm conferencing with today. And so it's just kind of nice to have it all in one spot for the students to know the expectations for the day. And so thank you so much for joining me. If there are any questions, please let me know. You can either do so by coming up front, or you can email me or find me on Twitter to ask those questions. There's also the podcast and that Gold EDU group, and then there's also a book if you want more.